It's traditional at the beginning of a talk like this for me to tell you a little bit about who I am, what my day job is. I'm not going to do that at the beginning today. I'm going to tell you about my job today. My job this afternoon is to scare you a little bit. I want to show you some of the complexity that's coming into particularly Google's search results, and among other things, show you a machine that's probably already better at your job than you are. But first, let's go back in time. Take you back to 2009. I felt like in 2009, I felt like I had a pretty good understanding of Google's ranking factors. And many of you probably felt the same kind of thing. Very quick refresher. Back in 2009, in my mind, you could think of three different kinds of query. You could think of your kind of hyper-competitive head terms, some stuff in the middle, and the super long tail. And in each of these areas, I felt like it worked a little differently, or at least you could treat it as if it worked a little differently. So in the hyper-competitive head, these are the kind of searches that are done many, many times every day, many, many different websites and businesses competing for them. It worked a little bit like this. Suppose you did a search like, how many people work at WhatsApp? There would be millions of perfectly on-topic results, right? Pages that are exactly about the way that I phrased this query and people who are competing to rank for this term. And so the search engine's job is essentially to pick from these tons of perfectly on-topic pages, only pick the perfectly on-topic ones, and then essentially rank them by some kind of authority metric. I'm not going to get deep into the details. You can think of this how you like, but essentially some kind of authority metric to rank those pages. So this means that you end up with a mix, for these hyper-competitive queries, you end up with a mix of home pages of decent-sized sites and inside pages on massive sites, ranking for these really hyper-competitive queries. And broadly speaking, the way you move up through those hyper-competitive search results would have been with more authority. Right? Broadly speaking, more links. I can't count the number of Q&A that I used to answer back in the day where basically the answer was, you need some more links. Little summary table for you. So essentially, you move up with more authority in this end of the algorithm. In the mid-tail, you would end up with a wealth of roughly on-topic pages, right? So there'd be tons of content to choose from that would, broadly speaking, satisfy the searcher's intent. So the person who's searching can find many, many examples of things that would be perfectly good enough. And so you could do pretty well if you had a perfectly on-topic page. If your page was perfectly optimized to the exact way that the user phrased their query and happened to perfectly match that intent, then you could rank pretty well even if your site wasn't huge. Equally, some massive sites would rank very well, of course, as well. So this was some kind of mix of authority and on-topicness. So you could, generally speaking, move up by targeting the keyword a bit better or by getting a bit more authority. Back in the super long tail, though, things were a little bit different. So these are the kind of queries. The example query I've pulled up here is, well, so the first one, if you were perfectly on topic for a super long tail query, you could potentially outrank really big sites, even with a site of arbitrary weakness. Right? So as long as it's in the index, you could outrank massive domains if you were perfectly on topic in the long tail, just because you had the content and they didn't. And this was the kind of like, you know, put your entire database of content online, pre-Panda, pre-everything else. Equally, there are some kind of queries that literally nobody has ever written about. So this example query I've got here, gifts for people who like Marie Kondo, life-changing magic of tidying up. This is an actual query that I did. Do you have any Marie Kondo fans in the house? Nobody knows what I'm talking about. It's a book about kind of minimalism, right? Getting rid of stuff you don't need, having only the things that bring you joy, as she puts it. And so I was looking for a gift for my wife. My wife had just read this book, was getting into all of this kind of stuff. It turns out it's a dumb idea to search for gifts for people who are reading about minimalism. So nobody's written this content. Nobody's ever written a page on the internet that says, here's a bunch of really great gifts for somebody who likes Marie Kondo's book, the life-changing magic of tidying up. So nobody's written this content. So who ranks? Well, what ranks is, in this case, book reviews. In this case, a Guardian article doesn't mention gifts, nothing to do with gifts, but it ranks because it's on a big site and it's roughly about the thing that I searched for in this super long tail. So generally in the long tail, you can move up just with better targeting. You don't need more links. You just need to be more about the thing that somebody's searching for. A nice little summary table for you there, useful if you're in 2009. So that was 2009. things have changed a little bit. The algorithm has got much more complex, even while the logo's got a little simpler. And I want to just work through what's happened in the time since then, briefly. So here's what went along. We had PageRank. People have talked about endlessly. This was the original academic breakthrough that Sergey and Larry had that meant that they could use the link structure of the web to build a better search engine. I don't need to teach you about PageRank. But that wasn't enough to build a search engine. You can't build a search engine on PageRank alone. They had to layer on top of it all of the existing academic research in information retrieval. Over the years, a bunch of their own original research, some of which has filtered out now. So you check out somewhere like SEO by the Sea, who writes about the patents that have been published out of Google, and you can pick up some of the things that they've figured out over the years. The thing that is talked about a lot less is that during that time, they also layered on a ton of tweaks, little tiny additions to the algorithm that don't necessarily make any sense and that made everything much harder to understand. They did improve search quality during this time, so they're measuring all these things. There's a fantastic thread on this. So Paul mentioned earlier about when Amit Singhal left Google, and when he did, there was a New York Times article about him leaving, and there was this Hacker News thread about the article, and it's absolute gold. So it's linked to in my presentation. You should check it out afterwards, but it's fascinating. So this guy, Kevin Lacquer, who was a search quality engineer at Google, shows up in the comment thread telling some anecdotes about his time trying to improve the search algorithm and his time working with Amit. And it's absolute goldmine. So he came from an academic background. He was a mathematician, PhD in maths, and he was approaching search like it was an academic problem. So he's trying to solve this problem. His job is to make search results better, but he's approaching it like it's a theoretical problem. What would create the best possible search results? How do I think about this? And he's stuck one day. So he's thinking about this like a math puzzle, and he hits a wall. And Amit walks over and says, have you thought about taking the square root? One of the variables that he's working with. And Kevin kind of scratches his head a little bit and tries to figure out why on earth he would be taking the square root of this variable. And Amit says, well, it doesn't have to be the square root. Anything that kind of looks like this graph, like a square root, a log, whatever. Just something that looks like this, like dampen it a little bit. Have you thought about trying that? And Kevin is kind of looking at him, saying, this doesn't make any sense. And he has this breakthrough. He says to Amit, am I allowed to write code that doesn't make any sense? And Amit says, yeah, sure. Multiply by 2 if it helps. Add 5, whatever. Just make it better. Improve the search results. Improve the metric we're trying to move, and we'll figure out how to make it make sense later. So these tweaks to the algorithm don't necessarily make any theoretical sense whatsoever. It just turns out that when they turn this dial, when they move this knob, it improves the search results, and users like it better, so they keep it. And actually, before I step onto that, I think that this is a big part of what's resulted in the complexity that we see now. So we've heard for years about the 200+ ranking factors. And I mean, search ranking results are essentially a function, right? And it's a 200-dimensional function. And it's nonlinear, and it's discontinuous. And did anyone here do 200-dimensional nonlinear discontinuous functions in their head? No? 0 hands. I certainly can't. But you're sitting there thinking, no, but I am quite good at this. I know what ranks. I know what should rank. I know what I have to do to get my clients or my boss's website to rank better. I know how to achieve what I'm trying to achieve. I know how to achieve this goal. I know how search results work. And I see some nodding heads. Everybody's like, yeah, I'm good at this. This is my job. Up for a little game? All right. What we're going to do is we're going to see how good you are. So I'm going to show you a bunch of different queries. And this is going to be interactive. Early warning. What we're going to do is I'm going to show you a bunch of different queries, actual searches that I've done. For each query, I'm going to show you 2 different web pages. Both of these web pages, for each query, both of these web pages rank in the top 10 for that query. You're going to tell me which one ranks better than the other. You should be able to do this because you know how search works and you're experts in this stuff. And we're going to see how we do. So I'd like everyone on their feet. Sorry, tough. I know some of you have laptops. You have to put them away. Everyone on their feet. Thank you. So here's what we're going to do. The first query. The search is future of TV advertising. That's the search. And the first page we're looking at is on Advertising Age, which is adage.com. And it's an article called Your Guide to the Future of TV. Remember, the search is Future of TV Advertising. Okay, have you got that page in the head? The second page we're going to look at is on the Content Marketing Institute. And it's entitled The Future of Television Advertising is Native. And its slug is television-advertising-native. These were both published in the same month, and they both rank in the top 10 for Future of TV Advertising. And you're probably thinking, fine, this is all the on-page stuff, but what about the authority of these pages? Well, you're going to see charts like this a few times. So rows are the two different sites. So the top row here is the Ad Age article. The second row is the Content Marketing Institute. This first column, this is the Moz domain authority metrics. This is a general metric of how powerful the domain that it's published on is. Page authority, so how powerful is the individual page in question. Linking root domains, how many external websites link to this specific page? Where does it rank? Well, that's what you're going to tell me. So, Advertising Age, domain authority 91 versus 86 for the Content Marketing Institute. Page authority 47 versus 57. Linking root domains 2 to Ad Age versus 9 to the Content Marketing Institute page. What I'd like you to do is put your right hand in the air if you think that Ad Age outranks, it ranks higher for this query. Right hand in the air if you think that Ad Age ranks higher for this query. Left hand in the air if you think content, keep your hands up, left hand in the air if you think the Content Marketing Institute ranks better for this particular query. Everybody should have exactly one hand in the air. No cheating, and no, everybody has to play. Okay, if you have your left hand in the air, please sit down. Right hand in the air, stay standing. Stay standing if you have your right hand in the air. A lot of people just sat down. Hope you're not here with your boss. Okay, that was just one go. We've got 2 more of these to go. Okay, you can put your hands down, but stay standing. If you're stood up, stay standing. The next query, Kettlebell Technique. Kettlebell Technique. The first page we're going to look at is on jensinkler.com, and the article is called Fix Your Swing. And it has a slug of fix-your-kettlebell-swing, jensinkler.com. Remember, the query is Kettlebell Technique. The next page is on mensfitness.com. And the article is called The Perfect Kettlebell Swing, slug perfect-kettlebell-swing. And remember, Kettlebell Technique is the query. Here's that list of factors that we've seen before. So domain authority, jensinkler 41 versus 76 for mensfitness.com. Very similar page authority, 42 versus 44. 12 linking root domains to jensinkler versus 20 to Men's Fitness. Right hand in the air if you think jensinkler ranks better for Kettlebell Technique. Right hand in the air. Left hand in the air if you think mensfitness.com ranks better. Everybody standing should have at least one, should have exactly one hand in the air. If you have your left hand in the air, please sit down. Right hand, stay standing. This is the final one, people, the final one. Okay, so last one. Do I need to back up my iPhone? Do I need to back up my iPhone? The first example page I'm going to show you is on macworld.co.uk, and it's called How to Back Up iPhone or iPad. A whole long title, slug, How to Back Up iPhone, iPad, Backup. Okay, that's on macworld.co.uk. Second example is on iDownload blog, and it's an article from 2013, What to do when there is not enough iCloud storage to back up your iPhone. Remember, the query is, do I need to back up my iPhone? Some metrics. Domain authority, 77 for Macworld versus 67 for iDownload blog, 59 for the page authority versus 34, 16 linking root domains to Macworld versus 3 to iDownload blog. Right hand in the air if you think Macworld ranks better for do I need to back up my iPhone. Left hand in the air if you think iDownload blog ranks better for this query. If you have your right hand in the air, please sit down. There's like, 10 people? Well done. Give yourselves a round of applause. You can all see Jono at the front for a job at Distilled later. Yeah, well done. And anybody who's seen it before, you're cheating. So, a few things. A lot of disagreement out there, right? Nobody agreed on that. Secondly, out of the audience of however many people we have, there are only a handful who managed to get through just getting 3 right. And this is exactly the skills that we need. Figuring out what we need to do to improve these results is exactly the same thing as telling which order they rank in. But it was a little difficult because I'm just showing the metrics I want to show. You didn't get to actually look at the pages, et cetera, et cetera. So we ran this for more queries with more people, allowing people to do anything they like to check out these pages, except run the actual query on Google, because that would obviously be cheating. 2,000 people, 10 queries, and the good news, if your boss is here, is they were no better than you were. So lay people, we also found out how much experience they had. So lay people, in other words, people who were not digital marketers, did pretty badly. 40-something% of pairs predicted the right way around. And that's not great. The good news, who here has some SEO experience but less than 3 years? A few people? So the good news is people like you did a little better than lay people. You can see that chart step up a little bit. Who here has more than 3 years of SEO experience? A lot of people in the room, right? Good news is you did even better. People like you did even better at this stuff. But the bad news is that this is where my machine comes in that's better than all of you at your jobs. Let's get it out of my pocket. I've got a coin here. Turns out that tossing a coin is actually better than SEOs, even those with 3+ years experience. This is a little unfortunate. But has resulted in massively lower wage bills at Distilled, as we've replaced everybody with these. This is somewhat challenging. This is surprisingly hard to do this. I don't think this is surprising. I think this is about as hard as you would expect it to be, in that we're within shooting distance of a coin flip, but no better. And that's because this is really hard to do. Bing pours billions of dollars into it and isn't as good as Google. It's no surprise we can't do this stuff in our head. But we tell our clients we can, right? We say, hey, this is what you need to do to rank better. If you improved this, you'd outrank those guys. You sure you're right? This is Sundar. He's the new CEO at Google. He's been there a while now. And as Paul mentioned earlier, he's replaced Amit as the head of search with John Gianandrea, who previously was running the machine learning team. And this is great news for search quality enthusiasts, because I'm pretty sure that machines are going to do a better job at this than the search engineers who worked on it previously. But it's very bad news for everybody who was bad at that game we just played, because these search results are going to get ever more complex and ever less understandable. And even the Google engineers working on it are not necessarily going to know exactly why a particular search result is ordered the way it is, why a particular page outranks the pages it does. And so my hypothesis, and the hypothesis that we've been working on at Distilled, is that this means that we need to do a lot more testing. We need to add a lot more science to this game. And where possible, we need to be testing on the actual website that we're going to make the change on. So it's not just, it's a little bit about testing in isolation, running experiments on throwaway domains and that kind of stuff. But some of it is about testing in the real world. And that's what I want to spend the remainder of my time today talking about. So how do you run an SEO test? Well, CRO split testing. You guys might have run conversion rate optimization tests, user experience tests using platforms like Optimizely and the like. They work by taking a single page and showing different variations of that page to different audience. So half the people see one version of the page, and half the people see a different version of the same page, and you compare those groups of audience. You can't do that with SEO testing, because there's only one Googlebot, basically. And so the technique that was first written about publicly, I think, by Pinterest, though now is in use at Etsy, they've written about it publicly as well, and a few other places that I can't talk about, they split the pages. So imagine an e-commerce site with thousands of products. Essentially, you take your hypothesis, this change to these pages will result in them ranking better, and you apply it only to some of those product pages. So this example here, we leave half the pages unchanged, and we apply our hypothesis change to half the pages. And then the maths gets a little tricky, but essentially we try and figure out whether that was a good idea or not. And it's important to note here that Googlebot is seeing this change. There's no cloaking. Googlebot is getting the exact same experience that a user is getting, just some pages have the change, some pages do not. Makes the maths a little difficult. You might recognize this guy as one of my colleagues. This is Tom Anthony. He is at Tom Anthony SEO, and he's running the team that's building the platform that we're building to help us do this kind of stuff. He's probably tweeting about it, and if you're interested in it, you can check it out at distilledodn.com. That's not what my talk is about. We're building that because of all the stuff I've just shown you, that we think we can't do this stuff in our heads. So a quick geeky diversion. if you'll excuse it. I'll try and be, well, this is mainly here. You can read this stuff in the slides later, but the key part is the output of this kind of split testing is something that looks a little bit like this. So the black line in this chart is the organic search traffic to the pages that get the enhancement. Okay? So just in this case, half the product pages that get our enhancement that we think is a good idea, and they get it on the start date. So this is the organic traffic that they get. We make the change on the start date, and then we hope to see that tick upwards. But as anybody who's ever spent any time in analytics knows, traffic ticks up and down for all kinds of reasons. Seasonality, site-wide changes, competitor actions, Google algorithm updates, you name it. There's many reasons why this fluctuates. So we need to compare it to a control. The maths gets a little intricate. I'm not going to get deep into that. There's resources you can read if you want to. We can't compare directly to the pages we didn't change for a variety of boring reasons. So we build the blue line is what's called the counterfactual forecast. So this is the best control we can make, which is essentially what would have happened to the site traffic, to the traffic to these pages, had we not made this change. So we're comparing the black line to the blue line. We're comparing what happened to the pages we changed compared to what would have happened if we hadn't changed those pages. And it's easiest to see on this chart, which you'll see a few charts that look like this one. This is basically just the difference between the black and the blue lines in the previous charts. This is just the extra traffic. This chart shows how much extra traffic have we had as a result of making this change to 50% of our product pages in this example. That's the line. And the pale blue area is the confidence interval. So there's a bunch of Bayesian statistics going on for anybody who wants to have some bedtime reading. But basically, we're 95% sure that the true value of this line falls somewhere in that blue range. And this is a fairly standard profile of a winning test. It takes a little while for Google to recrawl and reindex. And then somewhere around the 5th or 6th of April, you start getting excited because it looks like it's ticking up. But it's not until out here on something like the 9th of April where the confidence interval passes 0 that we can say with statistical confidence, this test is a winner, this change was a good idea, we should roll this out to the whole site. So, resources if you want to read them. I'm not going to go into that now. We've been running a bunch of these tests. Okay, we've been running them on our consulting client sites. We've got customers of the platform running them, and we've just been aggregating all of this data as best we can. And these are some that I'm going to just run through today. Hopefully I have time before I get kicked off. I want a quick shout out to my colleague Dom, at Dom_Woodman, who is the lead consultant on our split testing projects at Distilled, and who collated all this data and pulled it all together, and I stole it from him. So, thanks, Dom. First one, structured data. Structured data is a really big deal, it turns out, especially on category pages. This is a category page on an e-commerce site. All the examples here, most of the examples here are made up, but this is, as in, they're not the actual site we ran the test on, they're demonstrative examples. This is a category page on an e-commerce site. They typically have a lot of images, not a great deal of text. And often, they don't have any real structured data to speak of. No schema.org, RDFA, microformats, any of that kind of stuff. We wanted to test what happens if we add some schema. In particular, if we mark up all the products that are on this page with structured data, does that make a difference? Seems like it should, but is it worth the engineering effort? Turns out the answer is yes. We did this on one of our customer sites and saw an increase of organic sessions of 11% simply by adding structured data to category pages. Good. Best practice aligns with actual results. That was good news. Alt attributes. Anybody seen the correlation studies that show that having good alt attributes with keywords in images on the page is highly correlated with ranking better for the query that you're targeting, right? Everybody's seen those studies, tons of those studies. It's very well correlated. So we thought we'd test to see if it actually makes a difference. So this is an example of an image on a product page which has no alt attribute on the image, and we ran a test that added some. And I'm sorry to say that it made no difference. Just went sideways. So it seems quite likely that there is a high correlation here, but it's because the kinds of sites that rank well are sites that are well built, that have had SEOs work on them, that have keywords basically everywhere. And that's my hypothesis anyway. It certainly seems like in this particular example, on this particular site, we could detect no statistically significant uplift from adding alt attributes to the images. Title tags. This is an interesting throwback. So this is an output of keyword research, right? Everybody's done the kind of keyword research where you look at the variance of the kinds of key phrases that you're targeting, and you look for patterns, and you say, is it better to do it this way around or that way around? Is it better to say hotels near location or location hotels? Those kind of things. Like, what do people search for? And we do this kind of keyword research all the time. And then we roll it into recommendations to say to our clients or to our web team, we should use this kind of language because this is how people search. And I think that probably worked, well, I know that worked very well back in the 2009 era, where everything seemed to match up perfectly and all the pages were exactly aligned with the way that you typed the word into the search box. But when we tested this, so we had an example where the site was targeting the second version, essentially. So the way it was phrased on the site was the lower traffic variant of the key phrase, and there was a higher traffic variant. And we tested what happens if we just switch that out. We didn't detect ranking changes. So this wasn't about suddenly targeting a harder keyword and ranking less well or any of that kind of stuff. As best we can tell, this is a click-through rate change. This is the fact that the less often searched version of the key phrase is the more often clicked version of the key phrase when it appears in your snippet. PPC has done click-through rate optimization forever, but it's never been a big part of organic search, and I think it should be a much bigger part. Decrease of an average of 8% of sessions when we change to what should have been the naive recommendation, right? Change to the higher volume searched key phrase. So those are all interesting. I wrote this one up recently. We know that Google is getting better at understanding, executing and understanding and indexing JavaScript-based content. So we wanted to see how real that was, how good they are at it. We had a client that, with JavaScript disabled, their category page looked like this on the left. In other words, no products, no links to products, no information about products. With JavaScript on, the page looked like this on the right. Look how you'd expect it to look. And interestingly, in fetch and render, it looked like the right-hand version. In other words, using the tool that Google provides to understand whether they can understand your JavaScript, the answer was a resounding, yes, they can. This is fine. This page looks fine in fetch and render. This is understood perfectly, no problem. Well, what we did was we ran a split test where we removed the reliance. So for half the pages on the site, we made it so that it was no longer reliant on JavaScript. In other words, you saw the fully featured version whether you had JavaScript enabled or not on just half the pages, and compared that to the performance of the rest of the site. And we saw a statistically significant uplift, just over 6% of organic traffic uplift, which is fascinating. I have some theories about why this is. I don't have time to get deep into it, but the point being, even if your site renders in fetch and render, you might be leaving performance on the table by relying on JavaScript. There's my blog post if you want to read a bit more about it. Final one, and this is last bit of interaction for the session. Everybody's seen this kind of stuff, right? So again, category page on an e-commerce site with a block of text written for SEO. If you're particularly lucky, it's in a div ID hash SEO content or something, just to make it like super clear. Everybody's seen this kind of thing? Yeah, you know, like terrible content that is clearly not designed for users, doesn't even read well, etc. Who has seen this on an e-commerce site and recommended that the client removes it? A few hands going up. Yeah, a few more? Maybe? You know, post-Panda world, maybe it's harming the site. It's kind of hard to know. If you've recommended removing this kind of low-quality content on category pages, you should give yourselves a big pat on the back, because we tested it and we got a nice little uplift. 3% of organic sessions, just from removing some poor quality content on category pages. Unless you work for this site, where we did the same thing. We removed some apparently low-quality content from category pages and saw a downtick in organic traffic. Still feeling confident in those technical documents, those technical recommendations, the things that you've told your clients to do? This is fascinating. We're seeing best practices not necessarily align with results. That's not that surprising. We're seeing uplifts from things that maybe shouldn't work. We're seeing no effect from things that should work. And we're seeing confounding results, where things work on one site and not on another. This is why we think the future of this stuff is that you have to be testing it. You have to build some kind of methodology to be able to test this stuff on your sites. We're doing a lot of it. You can read more about it if you want to. I'm finding that this is changing the way that we think about how we advise clients. I was just saying to somebody before I came on, it's fascinating that there are some ways I knew it would change our work. We would find out if we were right or not. It would be easier to get budget for things, times when we were right, those kinds of things. The thing I didn't anticipate, and I probably should have, is that we're testing things that we would never have recommended. If you think about how confident you have to be for something to go in that top section of your technical recommendations document to your client and say, hey, you should do this, you have to be quite confident. We're testing things where we have way lower confidence than that. It's kind of like, we think this might work. Do you want to give it a try? They're like, sure. Only particularly in cases where we're fairly confident it's not going to have a negative result, but we're just not, we don't have to be certain. We can test it. So that's kind of interesting. I've written a little bit more about that. And I think I'm probably out of time, but just before I finish up, the coin I showed you, this isn't really the machine that is better than you at your jobs. We've been experimenting with trying to build a better machine. We've been trying to use Google's TensorFlow, which is their machine learning framework, pump in a whole load of data from places like, we use stat, rank tracking, every API we can get our hands on about link data and on-page content and all those kinds of things. And we've built a kind of prototype thing we call DeepRank, which is basically a machine learning program designed to do the same thing that I was asking you to do earlier. In other words, taking a page, taking a query, taking 2 pages, and tell you which one of those pages will rank better than the other. It actually spits out a probability. So it says, I'm 60% sure that page A should outrank page B for this query. If we just naively take that as read, we just take the one with the higher probability and say that's the winner, then we end up with a computer program that can attempt to do the exact task I was asking you all to do earlier. Which of these 2 pages ranks better for this particular query? You remember this chart? Lay people, less than 3 years SEO experience, 3 years SEO experience, coin flip, computer program. Computers are going to be way better at this than we are. They probably already are, but they certainly are going to be. And in my opinion, we need to be developing our plans and our processes and our approach to search marketing in such a way that we're building partnerships with the machines, and we can get great results even as these search results continue to get more and more opaque and obscure and harder to understand. So that's the end. I don't think we have time for questions. We never normally do. So hit me up on Twitter, @WillCritchlow. Thank you very much.